Where do songs come from? How do you write a song? I can't tell you how anybody else does it, but I will talk to you about how we do it in our band. Hey, I'm Josh. I'm the guitarist for A Sound of Thunder. We're an independent heavy metal band. We've been around for about 15 years. And between our 9 albums and several EPs and singles, we've written over 100 songs. I probably have another 50 to 100 songs under my belt from various other projects. And I'm generally in the studio for almost every day of the production process, along with our producer, helping nudge the songs along in the right direction and get the arrangements into their final forms. I love the process of songwriting. I love the puzzle and the challenge of it. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about our process of how we get a song from an initial idea into a finished demo arrangement. I hope it'll be interesting for music fans. I hope it'll be helpful and encouraging for any budding songwriters out there, or maybe it'll just be interesting for people who want to see how somebody else does it. Any song is going to start with an initial idea. That's just some short phrase or section of music, like a guitar riff, a bass line, a drum beat, a melody. Could be anything really, as long as it's interesting and exciting enough to you that you want to spend the time to tack more parts onto it and build it up into a song. This can be a really intimidating part of the process though, especially for beginners. This might be where imposter syndrome kicks in. Maybe you don't feel like your ideas are good enough or original enough. So I want to talk just briefly about creativity and also share some things that have really helped me over the years to get over those mental hurdles and feel like I can really do this. I don't like to think of myself as an artist. When people talk about artists, they tend to use spiritual terminology. They talk about them getting their ideas from muses or tapping into some spiritual dimension or ideas coming from the heavens, channeling ideas from somewhere. You have to believe you're pretty special to believe any of that, and that's hard for people. I prefer to think of myself as a craftsman, hopefully a skilled craftsman. My ideas are coming from some combination of my skill level as a musician, wherever that's at, and my musical influences. That's just the music I like to listen to and the music I like to play. It's getting filtered through my brain and coming out through my body and my instrument, and that's where my ideas come from. When you're just starting out, you might feel like your ideas aren't good enough, or you might be concerned that your ideas aren't as exciting to you as the music by your favorite bands. And to be honest, even if you've been doing this for a long time, those feelings can still come back. So first of all, I'd say you're never going to attach to your own music the way you attach to the music that you grew up on. The human brain just doesn't work that way, so get that idea out of your head because it's not helpful. Secondly, I'd say you got to be able to write a Ramones song before you can write a Dream Theater song. And a lot of people out there like the Ramones better anyway. So if your ideas are on the beginner side or the simpler side, don't let that stop you. I'm going to share a riff here. Now the new riff for the song we're working on in this video is kind of an intermediate level riff, but this is the riff from the first song I ever wrote for the band. The song is called Discovery. That's it. That's all I had when I started. That is very basic. The only thing novel about that is that a couple of the chords move on an upbeat, but other than that, it's just basic bar chords. And yet that song became an early fan favorite for our band, and some of our fans have told us that it was a really meaningful song for them. So I'm glad that we took that very simple idea and moved forward and finished that song. So again, if your ideas are on the simpler side, don't let that stop you. Another thing you might be concerned about is originality. Are your ideas original enough? There are only 12 notes in Western music. They've already been combined every which way possible. It is very hard, if not impossible, to come up with something completely original. Now, here's something I've thought about a lot over the years, which helps me. I'm a huge fan of old music. I love Black Sabbath, and I love Blue Oyster Cult. Black Sabbath has a classic song called The Wizard, and Blue Oyster Cult has a classic song called Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll, which is blatantly based on The Wizard. In fact, the members of Blue Oyster Cult have admitted this in interviews. And yet, everybody knows, nobody cares, and they're both classics. I'm certainly glad that they both exist because I've enjoyed the hell out of both of them over the years. So if they can do that, I can give myself some leeway. If you have an idea that you're concerned might be a little too close to something else, if it's just one part, I say let yourself off the hook. Just try to take it in a different direction. One more thing on creativity. I have met a ton of people over the years who are absolutely full of great ideas, and they don't even know it because they're not recognizing their own good ideas when they come out. So first of all, you want to be recording. I think that's fairly obvious. But once they're recording, the tendency seems to be to just go a mile a minute and spit out a ton of ideas really fast. So my advice there is to slow down and also to use more repetition, because you'll be surprised how far a little repetition goes in helping you identify parts. Have some idea of what rhythm you're playing to, play to a metronome, or at least have some idea in your head, because it can be really hard for anything to become catchy if you don't have a sense of what rhythm it's supposed to be locking into. And finally, let other people hear your recordings. Let them tell you where their ears perk up, especially if it's somebody whose taste you respect or somebody who has more experience. And in the case of the riff for this new song for this video, I sent a rough recording out to the band. And the next day, our drummer Justin told me he had that riff stuck in his head in the morning. So that was a good cue to me that it was a good riff and we should move forward trying to make a song out of it. Now in our band, a lot of times the ideas will originate right here in our rehearsal space. We have a really good relationship, good musical chemistry. We're very comfortable with each other. So we can just start jamming, the ideas will start flowing, and we'll be recording. And yeah, I know it's a little grungy down here, but I've seen Rocky 3. I know what happens if you start practicing someplace too swanky. Now we're in my office, which I would by no means call a studio. I just have a cheap old Windows desktop computer here. I've got a 2-channel interface, a mic pre, a really old MIDI keyboard. I'm set up with Pro Tools on this. And if the band's not around, sometimes I'll plug directly into Pro Tools. I'll get my guitar out and start recording, sometimes even the keyboard first. And that's where the initial idea for a song will come from. But a lot of times the initial idea for a song will come from right here on the acoustic guitar. I really like writing on the acoustic. When I'm playing electric, I've usually got a ton of volume, a ton of gain, and I'll be throwing in tricks like trills or pick slides or harmonics. And no amount of those tricks can make a bad idea good, but they can fool you sometimes. On the acoustic guitar, there's nothing to hide behind, and I think if it sounds good on the acoustic, it probably is good. Now, I keep this guitar out on a stand all the time so that if an idea pops into my head, I can grab this quickly and easily, and I can work on that idea before I forget it. On the day in question, apparently the idea wasn't any good because it didn't pan out. I don't have a recording of it. I don't remember how it went. But once I got that out of the way, I started messing around with some major bar chords with sus4s. Sometimes I'll play these without the root and let the A string drone open. And if you're a fan of 70s prog rock, you're used to hearing these chords a lot. Those bands could practically make whole songs out of just sliding sus4 chords around. Also, you know this sound from Van Halen Unchained. Something like that. On this particular day, apparently I was feeling a triplet because I came up with this riff. And that was it on the acoustic. The whole process only took about 10 to 15 minutes, and I wasn't recording the whole time because the idea is not to capture every single thing I record. I don't want to have to wade through all that mess later to find the good ideas. But once I had the beginning of that riff, I had a rhythm in mind and my ears started to perk up, then I got my phone out and started to record. And what I got was just about a 4-minute recording of me figuring out the endings to that riff and getting it to what I felt like was a complete idea. And that was it. I hit stop. I knew I had the idea preserved safely and I could come back to it whenever I wanted. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to move over to the computer and see if we can take that one riff and turn it into a complete song arrangement. Okay, here we are finally on the computer. Now, before I even start a Pro Tools session, I've got to figure out roughly what my tempo is. If I had been playing to a metronome, I would already know that. But in this case, I was just noodling. I didn't really know where I was headed when I started playing, so I wasn't playing along to anything, and I have no idea. So I've got my original recording queued up here on my phone, and I'm just going to play this and tap along. I like to use this site, taptempo.io, but there are others you can use. So let's figure this out. And that's all we need. I saw between 139 and 144, and we can use that as a starting point in Pro Tools. So let's head over there. Okay, here we are in Pro Tools. I've got my session set up. I don't really have a strong preference for Pro Tools. I don't care what DAW anybody uses, but our producer uses Pro Tools. So if I hit a technical problem, he's usually able to give me some advice. That saves me time, and that's the main reason I use Pro Tools. Over here, you'll see that I've set the tempo at 150 beats per minute, even though we were closer to 140 beats per minute on the tap tempo page. So what gives with that? Well, over the years, there have been many instances, especially in the early days, when we would hit the studio, the producer goes, whoa, we got to bump this tempo up to get some more energy going. And then we're trying to record a song that we've demoed and rehearsed at a slower tempo, and suddenly we're trying to record it at a faster tempo. When the red light is on, time is money, and that's not a position you want to be in. So now we err on the fast side up front. You'll notice I've got a marker down already. That's something I always like to start doing right away in a new session. I'm a visual learner, so having markers naming each section of the song helps me keep an idea of the song structure as I'm building things up. Plus, if I write a new section, I get to put a new marker down. That makes me feel like I'm making progress, and that's always good. In this case, I have absolutely no idea what this riff is going to be in context of the song yet. It could be a verse, a pre-chorus, a chorus, or maybe it doesn't even come back till the very end of the song. But I did feel like it was pretty catchy, so I'm just going to call it main riff for now. And I feel like we're probably going to start the song with it. At least that's what I'm trying first. So main riff intro it is. You can see here I've already double tracked some rhythm guitars. That's something I always do. It's great practice. I've got to do it in the studio anyway. And if I hear these two tracks flamming, I know I've got to tighten up my performance a little bit. Plus, in a demo session like this, I'm working on a new song. I'm probably working on a brand new idea. And I know personally, I don't always even realize it if I'm not playing a new part exactly the same way every time. So if these two tracks don't match, I know I've got to work out my part a little bit better. And finally, honestly, the main reason that I always double track the rhythm guitars in a demo is because it just sounds way better. If you're going to spend all this time making a demo, just double track the rhythms. It sounds way more like a song. It's much more fun to work on and listen to. All right, let's hear what I recorded so far. So you heard a new part there already. I was getting the sense that because this main riff is fairly busy and because our singer Nina is probably going to start singing immediately when we get into the verse, that we were going to need some space or a pad between those two sections. And what better way to get space than to just hit one big old chord and hang on it for a few bars. Now, I also had a sense that this verse was going to move to A, and E is the dominant or the fifth of A, so I tried moving to E and it sounded pretty good. And of course I couldn't leave well enough alone, so I also added some melody inside of that chord. I start with a sus4, release it, back to sus4, and then I mute the third string, which makes the fifth on the second string ring out a little more clearly. So this is the melody I put inside of that chord. And here's what it sounds like strummed. And then I can go E, G, back to D if I want to return to the riff, or E, G to A for the verse. All right, let's hear how this flows from the main riff through the E sus tag into the verse, and then you'll hear what I came up with for a verse. But I want to point out here that I made this E sus tag repeat, and I'm not sure yet if that's going to be just right or if it's going to be too long. I can kind of imagine it with our bassist and drummer, Jesse and Justin, just going off on that second repetition, but it also might just be too long. That's the kind of thing that we've got to figure out when we get to rehearsal with the full band. But that's how I'm doing it for now, and we'll just cut it later if it's too much. Now we're moving into the verse, and I want to change things up because the main riff leans pretty heavily into major chords, and our pad or our tag chord is also a major chord. I want to get a little darker sound going in the verse. I had said earlier I felt like the D from the main riff implied a good resolution to an A, and I want to try the mode of A Dorian. Dorian gives me a flat 3 or a minor third. That gives me the darker sound I'm looking for, but it also has a major 6th, which I feel is just a bit more interesting than a flat 6 that you'd get in a natural minor key. Also, because everything before the verse is strummed, I'm going to move into some palm muting here just to get a change of texture going. So a little darker, a little tougher sounding. Another interesting thing about being in Dorian here is that when you get up to this flat 3 chord, or the C, the major 6th of this mode is actually a diminished 5th, or an augmented 4th, really, of the C. And that's really interesting to my ear. Other than that, I didn't make this section too busy. It's fairly straightforward, but the vocal is going to enter here. Really, we want Nina to take the spotlight here, so I'm just trying to stay out of her way and give her a good foundation to sing over. Okay, now we'll hear a longer section from the end of the verse into a new tag that I've added, back to the main riff, which I suppose is a pre-chorus if we put it in this position, and then into our big chorus. And I'll talk about all those parts, but for now I want to point out that I put a pretty busy part on one side of the rhythm guitars in this G tag section. And I imagine if our singer Nina wants to hold out one long note over that section, that might work. But otherwise, I'm probably going to have to get rid of that busy part because it's going to be too much to sing over. I just wanted to try it out. Moving on from the verse, I know I've got to get to a chorus pretty soon. I'm going to rely on instinct and experience and imagination here a little bit to figure out what I think is going to sound good and what I think is going to work once we have the full band and the vocals involved. I've added a pad or a tag again at the end of the verse just to give Nina some space to hold out a long note if she wants or do something different. The run at the end of the verse ends on a G, so I'm just going to hold a G. I hold that for 4 bars. Nina can do whatever she wants there, or we could end up cutting it. Then again, we go to a main riff, and we could jump straight to a chorus without doing this main riff. I felt like I wanted to hear the main riff again already at this point, so I threw it in, and this would be like a pre-chorus position. So verse, pad at the end of the verse, main riff. Then we got to get to the chorus, and we do something here that we never do if you know our band, which is do a 3-chord chorus. It's major key. It just gives Nina a ton of space to open up and do something really big, epic, and feel good here. On the 3rd round through the chorus, I do add a little alternate. And that puts a melody into the backing track that she can follow. Maybe we put some other instruments with it. And then simplifying the 4th round. Picking up with some palm muting to add some energy at the end there, moving into a solo. Next, we're going to hear from the end of chorus 1 through the entire solo section. And when I'm demoing a song, if I have a very straightforward backing track for a solo section, I usually won't worry about that demo solo too much. I'll just rip a quick and dirty solo and usually not even care if I mess up or if it even sounds good. But in this case, because there's multiple key changes, a couple of them are a little outside the box, I'm going to spend a little bit more time, which you can see I've done. There's multiple regions here where I worked on some different phrases. And I'm not looking for anything too tricky or difficult to play at this point, but I am trying to make sure that the arrangement works, and so I want to make sure I can come up with a solo that makes everything feel like it flows nicely. So hopefully that's what we've got. So for this solo section, my goal is to keep it moving along pretty briskly. I want it to evolve and feel surprising for the listener, but hopefully not jarring. We're coming out of the chorus, which ends on a G chord, and we're going to come right back up to A, where the verse was. And in fact, I'm going to play this just like the verse at first, so hopefully it'll feel familiar to the listener, as if a second verse is starting up, only with guitar solo instead of vocals. But then we're going to move right away. We're going to move up to D for a key change to keep it surprising. For the next section of guitar solo, I knew I wanted to return to the chorus chord progression, but with a surprising key change. By changing the progression, we keep things evolving and prevent the solo section from feeling too long or getting stale. By making it the chorus progression, we give the listener something familiar, so it creates a sense of connective tissue within the song that I'm always looking for. And by making it a surprising key change, we just get that sense of surprise, which I said I was looking for. But I also felt like it was probably going to be time to be getting back to our main riff after this whole solo section, and the main riff is in D. So I didn't know what key I wanted to change to, but I knew wherever I ended, it needed to be someplace that would flow nicely back to D. And the way I figured that out was by reverse engineering a bit and thinking about the chorus chord progression. The actual vocal chorus earlier in this song is in the key of C major or A relative minor, but that doesn't matter at all here. I'm just thinking about these chords in terms of their relationship to each other. And if we're in a major key, it would be a 4-1-5 progression. To me, I tend to think in terms of minor key. So to me, this is actually a flat 6, flat 3, flat 7 progression. And if we're in a minor key and F is my flat 6, then I know I have an E I can use for a dominant or a 5 chord. We don't actually play the dominant in the vocal chorus, but I know I could tack it on to the end of this guitar solo and it would make a nice dramatic ending. So from there, all I have to do is figure out where that chord should be that would lead nicely back to my main riff in D. The most obvious place to put it would be on A, because A is the 5th of D. I don't like to use the dominant too much that way. It feels overused and a little predictable. So I put the dominant on G, which would be the 4th of D, and it still works nicely. If G is where I'm ending, if that's my 5, then I know that A flat is my flat 6 chord, and that's where my key change chorus should start for the solo section. Okay, now we're going to hear from the end of the guitar solo into where I thought the main riff was going to come back, but I decided to do something a little bit different. I'll talk about why after this clip, but for now I want to say I don't know what's going to happen with the production in this next section. I don't know what's going to happen with the instrumentation, although I definitely feel like it's going to change and probably not be high gain electric guitars, at least at first. I don't know if there will be a vocal, and it's long. I definitely hear this crescendoing, and there's got to be crazy drum fills at the end. But sometimes you just got to take a leap of faith, so I wanted to put this idea down, and I'll be listening and trying to imagine what could go over this. If you hear anything over this in particular, let us know in the comments. All right, well, what you heard there was not the main riff after all. It occurred to me that one thing this song didn't have enough of yet was dynamics. In other words, changes in volume and intensity. So what I ended up doing was an alternate version or something based on the main riff using similar chords, but bringing the intensity way down. And so I've just got this little picking pattern. I'm not trying to sweep this, I'm trying to pick every note individually. And it's still using the D sus4 to start. And changing to the C sus4. Just like the main riff, only a different pattern, different intensity. That'll repeat, I don't know how many times yet, it'll depend what the band decides to put over it. And then eventually it'll climb up, applying that same concept from the main riff of just sliding these sus4 chords around. But now it's gonna go up to some positions we haven't used yet. It's gonna go from the D to an F, to a G, and then finally ending on an A. Holding out that A for drama, and then we can go A, G, F to get us back into our chorus for a final chorus. All right, here we are at the end. The chorus comes back, the main riff comes back for the first time since the beginning of the song, only now we've got some changes at the end of the riff for some big bass and drum accents, and then we've got a fade out. We move from the arpeggio section into a second and final vocal chorus, and then we return to the main riff for the end of the song. I added some changes here. I don't want to just copy and paste and give up on the end. I can put in the extra effort to add a little bit of new information. And also, I'm imagining that the bass and the drums are going to play these changes at the very end along with me as big, heavy rhythm accents. And in my experience, those kind of endings work really well live. I really like that because somehow it modulates us to C, and C feels like a new tonic there, which is surprising. And then I couldn't leave well enough alone, so I moved away from the C to a flat 7 or a B flat chord. And that is a trick that I straight up stole from Iron Maiden. You can hear that at the end of The Wicker Man, where they move away from the tonic to a 7 chord, and then they just let it fade out from there. It's a little less strong and conclusive, but it is more dreamy, and it might lead nicely into the next song on an album. I'm not 100% sure we need it here. We'll try it out. Maybe we'll end up just ending on the tonic, but that's a decision for the band to make. All right, we did it. We took one little riff and expanded it into a rough but complete instrumental song arrangement. From here, we'll take that into the live rehearsal room and play this with the full band, and we'll answer some of those questions I mentioned, like whether certain parts might be too long or could be cut altogether. Nina, our singer, should get some lyrics going, so hopefully we'll have a working title for this thing pretty soon. From there, I'll update my guitar tracks with any arrangement changes, send those over to our drummer Justin, who will cut demo drums. He'll send the drums back to me. I'll probably erase my original guitars and cut new guitars directly to his drums. Jesse will add bass on top of that. Nina will add her vocals. I may come back and add some keyboards and overdubs. And then we'll have a really polished demo, which we can hopefully take into the studio and use as a template when we record a final professional version of this. So if you'd like us to document all that and maybe make this a playlist, let us know in the comments. And also, this was a really long video for our channel, so just leave us a comment anyway and let us know you're a survivor and you made it till the end. And by God, if you made it this far, like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. See you in the next one.